So today is the sixth and last class in this first section of the course. So for those who have been brave enough to stay with us till now, I need to say a few words on where we go from here before turning it over to Adrian to lead us in this class. So just a few glimpses of next steps after today. So I think all of us have had a sense of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's quite unique capacity to talk our language and to present the original, authentic Dharma in ways we can hear it. Ogyen Tobgyal Rinpoche always referred to Trungpa Rinpoche as a great scholar. And I think you have a sense of that from all the meticulous use of traditional categories and the references to Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche's Treasury of Knowledge and so on. So this has been the foundation of our study of the Śrāvakayāna path. So from that perspective, the next 6 weeks may appear in a totally different color. But I want to emphasize that in a very fundamental way, they don't actually deviate even slightly from our study of the Four Noble Truths. It's really very much in line with where we've been going so far. So just to introduce the next section of the class, after Trungpa Rinpoche went to the West and observing our, I don't know how to put it, barbarian culture, let's say, and our blatant materialism, and in the West particularly, our theistic inheritance with its belief in original sin rather than basic goodness, Trungpa Rinpoche was really torn. How was he going to bring the incredibly precious teachings of the Buddha to this modern world? And that literally tormented Trungpa Rinpoche during his first years in the West. How was he going to convey this? Returning to Asia in 1968, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche did a retreat at Taksang in Bhutan, and the remarkable Sadhana of Mahamudra came to him. And that sadhana was a response to his question. And so he made that amazing practice available to all his students, including the newest. So it's very appropriate that we introduce this to everyone here. And since we're just entering the path section of this course, it's totally apropos to introduce the Sadhana of Mahamudra now. So for the next 6 weeks, from February 14th to March 21st, we'll actually watch videos of 6 talks that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche gave on the Sadhana of Mahamudra. And we'll have discussions led by one of Trungpa Rinpoche's earliest students, Barry Boyce, who has worked so closely with the sadhana for over 50 years. In fact, Barry wrote the introductions to the 2 Shambhala publications on the Sadhana of Mahamudra. So he really is the best authority we could find to lead us through this next section. So I need to let you know that the format will change a little for the next 6 weeks after today. In order to fit in both the video and Barry, we won't have breakout groups over the next 6 weeks. We'll all be together for the discussion and question and answer. There also won't be required readings, but after this class, you'll receive about 25 PDF documents with plenty of supplementary materials related to the Sadhana of Mahamudra that you can read over the next 6 weeks. How you read them, in what order that happens to interest you, is totally up to you. In the 4th week of these Sadhana of Mahamudra classes, on March 7th, after we've studied the sadhana for a bit, we'll all practice it together. And after that, you will actually be permitted to practice it in the future. So that will be in some way a real, what do you call it, like induction into Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's mandala for those of you who are interested. Then on March 28th, after those 6 weeks, we'll come back to this format for the last 4 Śrāvakayāna classes on the 4th Noble Truth, our path to liberation. And there we'll come back to this format with a schedule of readings, the breakout groups, the question and answer and discussion, where you'll be introduced to some more really wonderful teachers. Now, I need to say just a word about what happens after that. And by the way, we'll send all this out to you too, so you don't have to be scribbling down notes when I mention dates here. But after the Śrāvakayāna section, at the end of April, and I need to mention this now because you'll have to register for that, Khenpo Sonam Phuntsok, who is really a superb teacher, very, very close to Dzongtsa Khyentse Rinpoche, he will teach an intensive 10-day course on the Abhidharma, which I don't know how to describe that. I guess you could say it's the definitive manual of Buddhist psychology from 2,500 years before Sigmund Freud. So Khenpo will teach on Abhidharma at Deer Park in India from April 27th to May 6th. And that intensive will also be part of this course. Course participants in India may wish to attend in person at Deer Park. And I'm glad to tell you that some accommodation is still available at Deer Park for that. For those not in India, you can join online, and the recordings of each class will be sent out each evening. But for all of that, whether you intend to attend in person or online, you do need to register separately for Khenpo's course. And we'll send out the where to write to do that. It's basically info@deerpark.in, but we'll send that out. And the reason you need to register for that is that Deer Park will be actually sending out the recordings of the teachings, and they need to have a full email list of the participants in this course who are doing this so that they can send the recordings of Khenpo's classes to you each evening. So that 10-day intensive, end of April, beginning of May, is more demanding than meeting once a week. So after that, we'll give you a bit of a break for a couple of weeks. And after that, so that you can actually catch up on Khenpo's talks, any that you didn't have time to download and listen to or watch. So you'll be able to catch up on those. And after that, we're going to spend 2 weeks studying Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's own approach to Abhidharma in his book, Glimpses of Abhidharma. And I'm mentioning that now. We'll send out the readings for that as we usually do, but you may wish to order the book so that you have a copy. So we'll send all this information out to you, but just to let you know that after Khenpo's course, we will also look at Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's quite unique approach to the Abhidharma, which again is both traditional and incredibly, how to put it, in tune with our times. And then after that exploration of the Abhidharma, we will have the 10-week course on the Mahayana view and path. So that's a very quick overview of the full 7 months of this course, and particularly of our next 6 weeks that will look a little bit different from the last 6. So we'll send the information out to you, and now I'm happy to pass this over to Adrian to lead our sitting meditation and further study of the third Noble Truth.
Thank you, Tashi. Hello, everyone. This is our last class together. We hope it's been enriching for you. And as you can see, there's a longer journey ahead of us. One thing to take away, though, that a journey into Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's mind is really grounded in our sitting practice. If you were to study with him or in any of his centers now, the first thing that you will do is learn to sit. It is what is in the beginning, in the middle, and always the practice that you will be coming back to again and again. So if there is one takeaway from these 6 weeks that we've had together, we hope that we've conveyed to you the importance of practice along this journey, and really learning to be with yourself. So we'll just take the next 5 minutes to just settle in. And by now you've probably heard all the same keywords, but I'll just keep repeating them because they do, over time, really help evoke muscle memory, you can say, a deeper wisdom, a felt familiarization of what it is to really learn to just be with ourselves, to be present in the world. So we always start with our posture. And again, when I say muscle memory, it's something that we learn to cultivate on the cushion, but in reality, we carry this into the world, this sense of being upright, strong, but also very open to the world. So we embody that through our sitting posture, strong back, and a soft front. Again, we don't need to be anything else. We don't need to puff ourselves up, nor do we need to hide. Simply being upright and awake. And human. And we breathe. Trungpa Rinpoche's particular meditation instruction was to flow out with the out breath. And that as we flow out, our awareness actually begins to settle and expand. Our nervous system comes to settle. And we feel a softening and expansion into the space around us, the room that we're sitting in. And when we find that we're taken away by a thought or deep in thought, we simply recognize that and return to the out breath. So let's just sit together for a bit. Thank you, everybody. So our 6-week module will end with the third noble truth, as Tashi said. To recap, I think Andy did this last week, but we've really gone on this journey together of the truths that are seen by the noble ones, those who have seen the truth of our reality, see that this human life of ours is marked by dissatisfaction. Life is a endless quest of problem solving, and that this dissatisfaction, this dukkha, actually has an origin to it. We explored how the kleshas, the strong emotions that arise when we are trying to get what we want, when we're trying to avoid what we don't want, how that actually perpetuates our suffering, and how often these kleshas actually trigger a habitual way of reacting, habitual patterns that set forward a chain reaction of behaviors which actually just continue and perpetuate our dissatisfaction, both for ourselves and for others. We call that cyclic existence, this continuous cycle, samsara, and that we don't actually have to be lost in the waves, lost and drowning in the oceans of samsara, but that through little glimpses, this is what Andy talked about last week, that through just little moments, we can find cessation. We can find little moments where we can sort of unplug ourselves from being sort of caught in this cyclical existence, just this cycle of reaction and being triggered, and that we can create little moments where we can have a bit of space, insight, maybe actually have some intention and compassion in how we want to live in the next moment and not just be triggered by a habitual way of reacting. So that is where we are today, continuing this exploration of the third noble truth, the truth that we can find cessation and that we can liberate ourselves. Really, this is the Hinayana path is known as the path of individual liberation. And that through little moments, which we can actually begin to see and practice on the cushion, we can liberate ourselves from these chain reactions and find a moment of peace, awareness, softening, openness, and then be a little bit more mindful of how we want to go about making the decisions and living the lives that we want to live. So the interesting, you will see this, and Andy and Tashi have been talking about it, that here we actually have had a very traditional presentation of classic Hinayana teachings. This particular chapter, chapter 8, that we read in The Truth of Suffering, reviewed and looked at cessation, this concept of cessation, through 12 stages. And this was captured by Jamyang Kongtrul Rinpoche, who was the 19th century Rimé master. He and Khyentse Wangpo and Nippon Rinpoche, Chökyi Lingpa were part of this Rimé movement. And Trungpa Rinpoche was raised and trained as a Kagyu Tuku. He had a Nyingma guru, Nyingma tutors, and it's said that when he fled Tibet, he was able to carry very, very few things, a few precious things he was able to escape with. in 1959. And one of those things was his Jamyong Cultural book, the teachings from Jamyong Cultural's treasury. So these 12 stages come directly from Jamyong Cultural. And I am not going to comment on these teachings. There is no better person to comment on Jamyong Cultural than Trungpa Rinpoche himself. He presents this classical understanding of a very classic sort of Hinayana doctrine of how an arhat is able to slowly begin to deepen his or her own practice, not an arhat, a Hinayana practitioner, and what the path looks like towards arhathood. And Andy had spoken about this in the last class, that cessation here in this sort of Hinayana paradigm was almost seen, the image that is classically used is the candle that extinguishes. Suffering has come to its cessation, nirvana is achieved. At the same time that Trungpa Rinpoche did present the very classic doctrinal exposition of the Hinayana tradition, he also was commenting from a Mahayana view. And the Vajrayana that we know of Tibetan Buddhism actually is no other than Mahayana with some skillful means. But this particular Mahayana presentation that Andy talked about, that cessation here doesn't mean the extinguishment, the cessation of experience. But here, cessation means the cessation of delusion. This is not the end of experience, but we are not deluded by what arises in our experience, namely all of our mental activity that we take for being very real. The things that we perceive, the projections that we make in the world, that we put onto others, the emotions that we take to be very strong and very solid, do not have the power that we infuse with them when we are deluded, but that our thoughts actually become more transparent. That's how Trungpa Rinpoche talked about it, that our thoughts become more transparent. We are less deluded. This is the slow cessation or liberation, moment by moment, from this delusion. This is the beginning of wisdom, seeing things as they are. And it's something that we can actually do, and we begin to see moment by moment on the cushion. This is not the big, like, final cessation where we are able to free ourselves from samsara once and for all. What we're actually talking about in a very real way is that we are gaining confidence and skills to see when we are engrossed in a thought, when we're really engrossed in an emotion, or maybe a storyline that's taking us away. And when we see that, we can like pop, we can like pop it. We can liberate ourselves from it. We can cease to be captured and engrossed by it. So we don't need to
Hi, everyone. Just to acknowledge that it's happening for everyone and you're not on your own out there. Adrian is trying to reconnect, so please just use this time with I don't know what as as you like. Okay, here she is. Welcome back. People got a lot of reason to have a nice joke about cessation of the Adrian. Oh yeah, I'm gonna give you the Carol, can you please give Adrian the co-host rights so she can unmute herself?
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself, Adrienne.
Hi. I got hooked away by my own clay shadows. Oh no, where did everybody go? Thank you for your patience. I was talking about pop, it looks like. Good, everybody's listening. That's great. It's good that people are listening. I was referring to Andy's quote, and this quote is actually in the chapter that we read today, that what we are practicing when we start to really get to know our mind, really become familiar with the workings of our mind, is that thoughts become transparent. And this idea of being able to kind of rest with something and look at the experience that is arising and not need to react, not need to be swept away, that you can kind of just be with it and it might pop. You might just be like, oh, thinking, go out with the out breath. Or it's a way of maybe needing to work with something a little bit longer. If it is a really strong emotion or a deep thought that you are engrossed in, that we learn to just stay and breathe through it and look at our experience. So I actually, in thinking about this this class, I was really honestly choosing whether to go through these 12 stages of cessation that Jamyang Kongtrul outlines, which I think honestly it's well explained by Trungpa Rinpoche. It's here in your reading. But I really wanted to continue with where Andy was going, which is very practical ways that we can learn to see the transparency of our thoughts on the meditation cushion and off the meditation cushion. So if you'll allow me, I'll be less of a Dharma instructor today and more of a meditation instructor. But so much of the wisdom of Trungpa Rinpoche was actually in his pith instructions that he left us, and pith instructions on meditation. So I think that is what I would like to share with you and impart with you to you. So we can begin to think about cessation, or moments, small moments of liberating ourselves from delusion, from engrossment, through certain meditation techniques. And I want to outline 5 of them today. So we have introduced to you the basic sitting practice, basic instructions that Trungpa Rinpoche gave to us for Shamatha Vipassana. There was a second reading that was uploaded to the folder on the 9 stages of shamatha. So this is the first meditation practice, which you can explore. The 9 stages of shamatha is a very classic teaching. And me personally, I would recommend this to a student who was feeling like they needed a little bit more structure. Maybe just sitting and going out with the out breath, Maybe the student might find themselves getting a little bit too lost. Maybe it's too open, or maybe a little too not enough form. The 9 stages of shamatha help really tame the mind, train the mind in a more, probably in a more structured way. And the purpose with this, 9 stages is really for the practitioner to gain trust in their mind, that they can really work with their mind and develop strength of mindfulness, strength of awareness. So the 9 stages of shamatha is something that you can explore. The second meditation technique is Trungpa Rinpoche's following the out breath, which Andy and Ken and I have been doing. And this, just to give you a little background, this particular meditation instruction of going out with the out breath, flowing out with the out breath, letting your awareness rest on the out breath, dissolving into space. These little pith instructions actually come from the Maha'ati tradition, from the Dzogchen tradition. It helps, like I said, and we've said this before, the practitioner to really drop into their body and also expand outwards, to really just allow the body, the nervous system to soften and expand. And as we flow out into space, Trungpa Rinpoche's initially, his definition of vipassana was panoramic awareness. That as we flow out with the out breath, our awareness can go all the way out 360 degrees around us. And that panoramic awareness is the beginnings of vipassana, of the prajna that is able to see space, to see emptiness. And Trungpa Rinpoche said, in panoramic awareness, the self begins to dissolve. So that on our meditation cushion, you can experiment what it is to really rest the awareness in a very wide open space. And for Trungpa Rinpoche, physical space and psychological space were one and the same. That when we flow out, that the mind also expands open. And when we are resting in the present moment, we're not involved in the me project. So the self begins to dissolve. We're not so caught up in me. Memories, plans, resentments, stories. So that's the second. I would encourage you to continue with the meditation instruction that we've given you. Flowing out with the out breath, dissolving into space, panoramic awareness. A third meditation instruction, which really helps also with the cessation of delusion and like just kind of liberating ourselves to get out of our minds, come back, is touch and go. Trungpa Rinpoche called it touch and go. So touch and go is good when we're meditating and we just really feel, some thoughts are a little bit more heavy. We're in more of mental chatter. We're thinking about what happened at work yesterday, and we're really needing to plan. We're finding that we're anxious about something in the future. There's just more things going that maybe breathing. As much as you breathe, the mind is still going. So touch and go is when we really make a moment when the thought arises, when we're seeing this like Netflix, when we're seeing this film play in our mind, that we can really touch it, and we touch it with our awareness. And we might feel it even. We're like, oh, yeah, this is about work, or Yeah, this is this family thing. We touch it and then we go. So it's not like we use the breath to just kind of bypass something, because obviously something is coming up, that we just give enough space to touch it and say, ah, this is this story. I know this story. It's the same story. You touch, you kind of feel it, you give it a moment, and then you go. You go out with the out-breath. And that touch is very gentle. It's very kind. You acknowledge, my mind is thinking about this, and then you go. So touch and go, it's a beautiful combination of like compassion, emptiness. You can touch, you don't have to stay, and you go. And again, we're liberating ourselves. We're ceasing to be caught in the delusion of these stories, engrossments, yeah? So this is all little ways we can work with cessation. So the fourth technique that I want to introduce very briefly, this is all very briefly, is working with strong emotion. So we know what this is. It's when we're really, really feeling something. Like it's that sad story again. It's that old feeling of resentment. It's this hope and fear that you're trapped into. So Trungpa Rinpoche, when students would ask, what do I do when I'm feeling something really, really strong? Like it's really strong. It just doesn't go away. It's here. So Trungpa Rinpoche said that these really strong emotions, they come up, but they have two parts to them. One part is the story, your narrative. He did this, and then I did this, and why am I so stupid? But he was so terrible, the blah, 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 the story, yeah? And then the other part of this emotion is the energy. And Trungpa Rinpoche says we drop the storyline and we just stay with the energy. So you can try that on your cushion, meaning we just drop the mental chatter around this emotion and just feel. You can stay with the energy. You breathe with the energy. You don't stay in the story. You just stay in the present moment of feeling and breathe. And what we're doing is we're slowly teaching ourselves not to get hooked by our karmic chain reactions. This is slow, very slow workings of how to liberate ourselves. We don't have to be afraid of this old story. We don't have to suppress it. We don't have to indulge it. We can just stay with the energy. So that's the fourth technique. And the last technique I introduced in my class 3 very quickly, that's Pema Chodron's 3-step process, very similar. Her 3-step process of what happens when you get hooked, or Shenpa. This sounds familiar. First, you recognize, I'm hooked. And you can do this off the cushion. We know this. You are at work or you're with your family. Somebody says something and you're like, oh. You can feel a contraction and you don't like something. So you're hooked, you recognize, and then you pause. You take 3 breaths, she says. But this is really the step where you are feeling. You're just feeling what you're feeling. You don't react. You just breathe. And it gives you space to choose what you want to do, which is hopefully step 3, which is move on, she says. Just drop it. You don't need to react. You don't need to say something. You don't need to fight. You don't need to do anything. So you recognize you're hooked, you pause, and you move on. So these 5 little techniques I just wanted to give you because they are very real world. We can all do them and start practicing them right now on the cushion. And we can practice them off the cushion, because this is how we will find little moments of cessation of our dukkha, cessation of our being engrossed or deluded, a way we can find liberation and just, open ourselves up to a little bigger space. So basically the main takeaway here is Trungpa Rinpoche made a difference. Even though he walked us through this Hinayana approach to what cessation looks like, at the end of this chapter, he does make a difference between the Mahayana view of cessation and the Hinayana view of cessation. And in the Hinayana, cessation is about we're leaving samsara, we're attaining nirvana. Leave samsara, attain nirvana. But the Mahayana view says, ultimately, we are transcending these polarities. We're transcending this dualistic notion of samsara and nirvana altogether. We're transcending both samsara and nirvana. It's this dualistic trap again of wanting to get out of samsara, clinging to the hope of nirvana, that is what keeps us stuck. And so many of you practice the Heart Sutra. We know that it tells us that there is no attainment, but there's also no non-attainment. And what that means is to transcend samsara and nirvana altogether is to recognize that those concepts are ultimately empty. But what is actually here right now is enlightened wisdom. That your own awakened nature is here. So there is nothing to attain. There is nothing to not attain. It's here. There is nothing to lose. There is nothing to gain. So just being in your experience and looking at it and seeing its transparency, that alone helps us just rest and to see what is happening in our experience. And that is the beginning of wisdom. That is learning to uncover the veils of delusion. And Trungpa Rinpoche closes by saying that, if we really look closely at what is it that, why are we stuck in this me project? Why are we always running after things? Why are we always trying to get things? What are we running away from? And a lot of it is fear. The entire Shambhala teachings of the Shambhala warrior of Trungpa Rinpoche talk about fear and what is it to live fearlessly. And here we're really looking at, can we actually stand and be in this magic, this groundless magic of life? That we're not ever going to find permanent, lasting comfort, that we're never going to live a painless life, that things will always remain a bit uncertain. Can we actually live with this uncertainty in this groundless space Trungpa Rinpoche talks about? So I'll just reread this quote that the chapter starts with. Trungpa Rinpoche says, when we transcend samsara and nirvana, we transcend cessation itself, so there is no ground. But that groundlessness itself can be a powerful expression of cessation. So I encourage you, actually, this will be what we'll be exploring in our breakout groups, to explore what groundlessness could be. how that could be a powerful expression of cessation. What would that be like? That instead of groundlessness being something that we would fear, that could be an open space of possibilities, of wisdom, of magic. What is it to transcend samsara and nirvana altogether, where groundlessness could be a powerful expression in and of itself? Okay, so we have 20 minutes for our breakout groups this time. So everyone, thank you again. We have the remaining time for questions, and I would love to call my my colleagues, my co-teachers, Andy and Ken. This is really your chance to ask any remaining questions you have from all of the last 6 classes we've had together. And yeah, we're here. Vivian.
Oh, hello. I'm kind of shy. Is it okay if I just drop my question in the chat?
Go ahead.
Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, no, it's too many words. Hang on.
Shibashish, Kohli.
Hello, everyone, and thank you once again. Am I audible? Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. My question is, thought creates impulse. Am I audible?
Continue, we hear you.
Yes, yes. So thought creates impulse. So what will be your say on the subject of impulse control? We control the impulse, or should it let it overflow? And sometimes it
Ken,
overflows.
I think you taught about the karmic chain reaction.
So we have to go and pick up the pieces again. So what's the thought of, I mean, like, if you can help us.
Well, first is you notice the impulse. If you're asking about impulse control, then there's some noticing that you have an impulse arising, and with our practice, with what we do is we notice it arises, and you have a choice. You act on the impulse, which gives kleshas an opportunity to arise, and you may act out in a small way, and the impulse could grow and grow. Or you notice, I suppose, with what Adrian just talked about, touch and go, that you would touch on it and then you would cut it. You would return to your breath, or you would feel the energy of that, of you would drop what the story behind the impulse and just feel that energy. So it's working with the technique and what you have learned so far. So, anything to add, Andy, Adrian?
I would like to jump in on Vivian's question in the chat because it's one that I'm interested in, which, if I can just simply paraphrase it, it's about not being captured or engrossed in thought and yet wanting to be a writer. Vivian's a writer, has that hobby, and I also have that hobby occasionally. And so writing and thinking is a great question. The thoughts are not the enemy. And I think what Trungpa Rinpoche wrote in this chapter about the experiential quality of cessation is the thoughts become transparent. That's really the key here. So both in our regular life, when we're thinking, when we're on the cushion and thinking, when we are writing and thinking, the problem is not the thinking itself, but it's our perception of the thinking, the way we relate to our thinking. We relate to our thinking as though we are thinking about real things in a real world that is out there and really important, and we're really important. Transparency of thoughts means recognizing that they are movements of the mind, that they have their own quality, but they don't have to drive us. They don't have to be part of some big project. So if you're a writer, of course, you're going to express things in words and thoughts, and that's fine. But you don't have to think about your thinking. You don't have to hold on to your thinking. You don't have to take your words as particularly precious. And then the writing will go a lot better because it will flow through you. I think the biggest challenge for a writer is not how to think about stuff, but how to get out of the way of thoughts. So.
Thank you, Andy. CH Sophie?
Hi, thank you, Andrina. I hear a question from Chinese group 3. One participant, her question is about the touch and go instruction. Could you please clarify the difference between touch and go and avoidance or separation? How can we tell if we are practicing cessation or simply escaping? That's the question. Thank you.
That's a really good question. Thank you. Touch and go, we usually introduce in Trungpa Rinpoche's tradition a very sort of basic experience you can have on the cushion every day. So it's really the your awareness touching into your thinking mind, what Andy just said. That you know you're thinking, you know you're lost in thought, and awareness touches into that. And sometimes that's all you need because you're training your mind, you're familiarizing your mind of what it is to be thinking. You are aware that you're thinking, so you touch into it. And you don't need to make a big deal, and then you just go out with the out-breath, touch and go. And that's usually in the context of just your regular sitting practice, because your intention on the cushion is to familiarize yourself with your mind, you know? So it's still a practice. Usually in our everyday, though, when we're really hooked, when we're talking about these kleshas, these big emotions, or these habits that just take us away, there is, in a lot of us, a habit of escapism. We try to hide or avoid or numb out. So that is when the instruction is, you know, you need to notice, you need to recognize that you're, you know, something has gotten you, you're hooked, or there's a klesha coming, and you rest. You rest with it, you feel the energy. And I think the difference is sort of an order of magnitude, but a lot of this is your own prajna. But if this was a real world situation off the cushion, you're having a discussion with your partner or somebody at work and they say something and you're about to react, you need to know how to pause. You need to have the awareness so you can pause, so you don't react and create more bad karma. And that only comes when you have a very strong familiarity with your habits and your reactivity and your mind. So I don't know if I answered Andy or Ken, if you have anything to add. But I think there's a time for training on the cushion so that when we live our life off the cushion, you can see where you are, if you are avoiding or not. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. According to your explanation, I think touch and go means working with our mind, friendly with my mind. It's different from escaping. That's my understanding.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good summation. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
specifically, these were instructions Trungpa Rinpoche gave us for meditation practice on the cushion. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Ines? Sorry?
Yes.
I think
I'm still confused about out breath. I remember last week Andy said it's not like you sending out, like pushing out. So you just kind of beware and dissolve. But it seems like if I start to pay attention to the out breath, then I start to differentiate there's an in breath. So there becomes something interrupting because in the past it was in and out, in and out. Now I don't quite know what to do. So that's my question.
Andy's squinting. Does anybody want to take this question?
I'd like to say something about that.
Okay.
Just the fact that you're noticing your out breath and the in breath. That I suppose that's your cue to just come back to the technique, or perhaps if you're getting caught up in that, just to stop the whole thing for a moment. To I think Adrian, you had mentioned that where you just you gaze up and you just sit there and then come back to the technique again. And to do that, undoubtedly, that happens again and again and again, at least for me. But just the noticing itself, you're doing the technique. You're working with your mind.
Let me
So it's being
also
aware that. Go ahead, sorry.
let me add something else to this. The instruction that I don't think any of us has mentioned is that you can just put 20% of your attention on your breath, that you don't need to
Breathe really deliberately.
try to breathe naturally. It's just a light touch of awareness that's going out with the breath. It's not 100% effort. And then it's easy at the end of the out breath to just let go because you're not holding on. Yeah.
And I just want to add to that that if it's 19% or 23%, that's okay too. You don't have to fixate on 20% particularly. That's merely a number.
Okay, thank you.
I think Siddharth had his hand up. It was at the beginning of the queue and then got passed over. So maybe we could.
Hello. Thank you, Adrian. Hi, Ken. I had a question about the study material. I wanted to understand the relationship between the 9 techniques of shamatha and the 6 powers. So just the relationship, like how they sort of interlink. Adrian, I saw you make this. It sounded really cool because the six powers sound like something that we can, sort of harness or like sort of build within ourselves. So it would be nice to understand there how they fit into each other. Thank you.
I'm afraid I don't have an answer to your question. But Andy unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's exactly the type of thing that I am completely oblivious to. That the 9 stages of shamatha is a great map that has practically nothing to do with my own experience. Maybe because I'm still at stage 1 after 50 some odd years of practicing. But I think these maps can be helpful if we don't take them too literally and seriously, and look for the next stage that we're going to accomplish and the next power we're going to have. So, even though they're presented as very serious, detailed presentations, they are not going to match your actual experience in any one-to-one fashion. That they're more finger painting for you. That when you have actual experience, maybe it'll correspond to something in the 9 stages. Maybe not. The main thing is to not get attached to particular ideas of progress or regress and just keep practicing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. Deanna.
Hi. Just something that came up from the discussion question that we had was, I was just wondering if you could comment on the difference between transcending nirvana and transcending the desire for nirvana.
I think that's really interesting. That's a really, really interesting question. You must have had a very juicy discussion. Hope and fear is something that we're going to be experiencing all along the path, for sure. And I think the last question really talks about that. It's good to have reference points on the spiritual path. How are we progressing? Where are we going? Where did I come from? And so these traditional teachings help provide some reference points. Yeah, most people don't want to stay in nirvana. I mean, nirvana, don't want to stay in samsara. And it's the impetus to move us along. But there is a lot of hope and fear that happens. And so when we're hoping for its opposite, it creates that creates its own striving. It creates its own expectations. It creates its own disappointments. We're constantly criticizing ourselves along the path. So that's obviously not a good thing. But basically, from a Mahayana view, nirvana only exists because samsara exists. And we're trying to transcend the whole duality of that altogether. So I guess my initial reaction was desire for nirvana is definitely something to look at for a practitioner, because it will create its own samsaric momentum for sure. And then you have to question what you think nirvana is for yourself. Yeah. Most likely it exists only in relationship to samsara. So you'll be bouncing back and forth between those 2 reference points as long as
In that question, it seemed to, because it was talking about, on the one hand, like transcending samsara or confusion, right? Which is like essentially like the belief in like a solid, true, stable identity, the self-cherishing, this me importance, right? And then transcending the desire for nirvana. I felt like um like the desire for peace, like the desire to have the things that serve this like fixed avatar self, the like Deanna mask thing, right? Like, so is like, I guess it like in the context of this question, was transcending samsara like transcending fear, and transcending nirvana like transcending hope?
That's really interesting.
That's a good one.
Andy?
Yeah, that's a good one. Transcending nirvana is having a sense of humor. You know, the
Okay.
thought that I'm going to get nirvana. Really? Is that how it works?
Thank you. That's actually really beautiful questions. I think one thing for me as, you know, a practitioner is just always looking, I see my mind always looking for a reference point for confirmation. And that is something to work with.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Danny. Hugo, hi.
Hello. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Ken. So I think it was briefly mentioned that physical space is the same as psychological space. That kind of seems like a big deal. So could you elaborate on what implication it has in meditation or outside of meditation?
I haven't talked about this with Andy yet, but it was a quote of an unpublished teacher training that Trungpa Rinpoche gave in 1971 in Vermont to some of his first new meditation instructors. Because often his meditation instructions were like, flow out with the out breath, gaze at the horizon, let your awareness flow out into the room. So there's a sense that you're pointing the student towards a relationship with the physical space in the environment, right? As the mind is following those instructions, there's a psychological space that the mind is relating to, that you can actually open up, be present, not be hooked and fixed and grasping to that memory or whatever daydream you're playing. So that there is that me project, that psychological kind of solidifying around a story. This happened to me. I'm replaying this in my head. That opens up into this present physical space. So for me, that was a helpful quote that I came across because I was trying to relate to this English word space that Trungpa Rinpoche often used. And sometimes it sounds like he's talking about material space in a physical sense, and sometimes he's talking about the mind. But sometimes the mind can actually open up by following these, taking a wide view, really opening up the eyes, the gaze, being in the room, being in the, being in this open present state. Anyway, that was my little Trungpa Rinpoche drop that I dropped in. Does that help? Okay. Thanks. Roberto?
Hi, thank you. In one of the previous sessions, someone asked a question about the luminous nature of the mind. And I don't know if I understood the answer correctly, but it seemed to me that they were talking about something permanent. So my question is, wouldn't the idea of the luminous nature of the mind as something permanent contradict the doctrine or the teaching of an Atman? I mean, if luminous nature of the mind is something permanent, that means there is a, I don't know, some kind of soul, or some kind of something that is permanent. So yes, that is my question. Thank you.
Well, we're getting to the limits of what speech can convey. When we talk about the luminous nature of the mind, we are pointing to the inexpressible. So sometimes we say that it's beyond existence and non-existence. Sometimes we say it's permanent. Sometimes we say that it is a non-implicative negation. There are lots of different ways of pointing to the inexpressible. But it is not something that words can communicate. So you have Dalpopa, the great Shentong practitioner in Tibet, who said that the nature of mind, the luminous nature of mind, is the true self, the true Atman. A very provocative statement, but only meant to provoke people who were thinking, oh, there is no such thing as the luminous nature of mind. So we can't be too attached to any of these descriptions. We just try to look and see what our mind is like rather than worry about the doctrine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rebecca?
Hi, hello. Hi everyone. And I got a small question about my practice. Is it like in my practice, because I have anxiety and I always have lots of thought, and I kind of use a very like disciplined way to cut my thought or try to keep myself in a very like detached position. And I feel like it's not something like I don't have the game of touch and go, because if I try to touch or I let myself to touch it, and I will be like I will be sucked by my thoughts, and like I would just use like very strong power to like defend my thoughts. So I feel like my way to practice is not that natural, that kind of like smooth way, kind of a very disciplined way. Is it right, or I just or maybe just at this like beginning of the practice? Yeah.
Anybody have anything they want to share?
I would just like to say that part of the practice is learning how to be kind to ourselves and how to to work with how we can relax into the practice, relax on our cushion. And I'm always giving myself a hard time of not I'm not doing this right. I've been sitting here for half an hour and sleeping for 20 minutes of that, and it's not going to count. And that anxiety, I think, in our world today is ever present. There's a lot to be anxious about, and it's good to notice that and to be with that, to feel that. But we can also perhaps let go of that a little bit and gently. We don't have to be hard on ourselves about coming back to the breath or any of it, but that just to continue to work with the technique and work with ourselves and to make friends with ourselves, to open our hearts before we can extend out into the world and help others. We really need to feel our own hearts first.
Yeah, so I think the notion of making friends with your experience is really important, as Ken said. The thoughts are not the enemy. And you don't have to be a great meditator. You don't have to be like a machine that's cutting every thought that comes up. Sometimes you can just sit there and be lost in thought. And then you'll find that you come back. And in a way, that coming back is more important than anything else. It's a natural quality of mind waking up. So we want to spend as much time cultivating the wakefulness of naturally coming back from being lost in thought as we do cutting the thoughts themselves. So fine, sometimes cut very attentively, and sometimes allow yourself to think and get lost in thought. And then you'll find that you come back. And that moment of coming back is really quite interesting and helpful because it's not you doing it. That's where you discover something interesting.
One image that helped me when I was beginning, because I just had, like everybody, just crazy racing thoughts all the time. The Nyingmapas often use the image of a wise grandparent who's watching their children play. Like you can see children playing on the beach. You can be an old grandfather or old grandmother. And your thoughts are like the children playing on the beach. And sometimes when I sat down, I just knew that the children had to go run around like crazy. I had to let the children run like crazy. And they would play and cry and have their own games. But every once in a while, like what Andy said, you wake up, you realize that your awareness is actually always there. Like the wise grandparent, you can actually take some space. You're not in the children's games, but sometimes you actually can just be a very patient and loving grandmother who watches her children on the beach, having a really good time. And you can play with them, but sometimes you just remember this is children's play. And, here I sit. So touch and go is almost like you're going to grab your grandchild, give him a kiss, and then let them go play. And then you go back to sitting, watching children play. Yeah. Thank you. It's a very important question. We've all been there. Thanks, Rebecca.
So everyone, I don't know if we should have another question or if we have reached our time.
Carol, maybe we could have these last two questions since this is the last class of this session, and then we'll end.
And then we'll dedicate the merit after the last question.
Okay, so Silvana, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. It was very, very delightful to hear all those explanations about the grandmother and the little children. So I was thinking about what Adrian answered one of the questions about when someone is triggered and this this instruction of to pause and and not say anything or do anything, and just I thought like for some people or maybe many people, this is quite a challenge because you'll be mute all the time because depends on the interaction you have with people, what kinds of people. And then I thought about I don't know, I don't have any information about this, but I thought about like a training, like a play, when people interact and then can, they can like experience all these triggering experiences in a contained environment. Because I think many people, when they are like children, they didn't have like the support to deal with their emotions, and as adult, they are like children, like they react to everything, and I just thought about this like a training, a play, where you could see that you are in a safe environment and you can like, because yes, like alone, like in the kitchen, you are with yourself, but when you go out, it's just, it's difficult. I can tell by myself, it's
Yeah.
really difficult. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. There is an element that what we do on the cushion is training for the real world. Absolutely. This is our training ground. So how we sit upright and awake. We have strength and natural sense of dignity and confidence, and we're open. And this same embodiment is what we bring to our conversations in the world. We don't have to hide, we can listen. And yeah, it is not easy. That's why it's practice. So, we continue to be disciplined, good with ourselves, remember our motivation. Why are we doing this? Why are we training? To bring benefit to the world for ourselves and others. So much of what helps us along the path, it is absolutely training, is, coming back to our intention. And that might be the Bodhisattva vow for many of us. But thank you. It's not easy, but we keep going, right?
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And the last one will be Terja Larson.
Yeah, thank you for the teaching up until this point. I had a comment regarding what we talked about, like the mind space and the physical space. And one thing that I thought about regarding that is like you have some kind of feeling like of being located in the physical space. And I find that one is a bit tricky. Like, is that on the, it's a bit mixed on the mental, or like I feel like that's a mental sense of being in the physical, somewhere in the physical space. You have some kind of feeling like of your location, and on the notion of the physical and mental space being the same. Like, I think that one is a little bit on both sides maybe. And yeah, I was wondering also, like, in terms of non-duality and like these kind of things also, how that plays into that with with the mind, or like, yeah, the physical and mental space.
So here's the paradox, if anybody wants to jump in. We need to be very embodied, actually, in order to not be embodied. If that makes any sense. I think we need to have a very healthy sense of being grounded, and then we start some of these practices. So, a practice instruction that you might hear maybe after you've established a sitting practice for some time of really being present Trungpa Rinpoche would sometimes say, we go out with the out-breath 360 degrees. That you can feel your breath on every degree of you going out. And it has a way of, it's something to explore for the practitioner. For me, it had a way of softening and opening and expansion and decentering also. But again, this is a progression. I don't know, Andy, if you want to contextualize this more also. Yeah.
I'd love to jump in on this. I think we have this notion that there's a physical space and a mental space. And that's where we start. That's how things seem to us to be. But once we start really practicing, we don't find any physical space. We just find experiential space. So when Adrian says being embodied is really important, embodiment is really important, exactly as she says. But that embodiment is the psychophysical body, not some physical body. It's our experiential, phenomenological body. Same with the space. The space is a phenomenological space. We don't find anything outside of our experience. And being grounded means grounded in our psychophysical reality, our experiential reality, our phenomenological reality. So we could have lots of arguments about whether space is physical, whether there is physical, and so on and so forth. But as practitioners, the main point is we have this experiential quality of being embodied, of being grounded, of being spacious or claustrophobic. And that's what we're going to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Andy or Ken, do you want to say any final words? It's really been
Thank you.
delightful.
It's been really wonderful to be teaching with you, Adrian and Andy, and thank you to Tashi and Ina and her team. And thank you, everyone, for coming back week after week. This is extraordinary and wonderful. It's great to be a part of this.
Amen.
Yes. Thank you, Tashi. Thank you, team. And thank you for everyone who has been joining us every week. It's been really, really wonderful.
Adrian?
And we will now dedicate all the merit that we've accumulated together. Do we have that to scroll?
Yeah, one moment. Actually, we don't have that right now. That dedication, maybe we could do just a short dedication today, not because I don't have the text here today. I don't know, maybe Tashi, do you have it?
Okay, just do it. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be free. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Viva Mu! Viva Mu! Viva
Thank you so large.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Hola, gracias. Viva Mu!
Bye.